Hello and welcome to Builders, the podcast where we explore the minds of innovators shaping the future. I'm Lee Haynes, and today I'm thrilled to have Jonas Martinsson, CTO of Stravito, with us. Stravito is revolutionizing enterprise knowledge management, enabling large organizations to centralize and unlock insights from their market research and data. And they're making exciting strides with generative AI to push this even further. Jonas has an impressive background spanning leadership in tech innovation, and today we'll discuss Stravito's work, its latest AI developments, and Jonas's thoughts on building strong teams and the future of AI-driven development. Jonas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Really nice for you to join us. Let's kick off, shall we, by you telling us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What came before Stravito, for example?
Right. So I actually started my career in a way that's a bit unconventional for at least for a Swede. So I started in corporate America. I was studying in the US doing an exchange year, and I'd gotten into my head that I wanted to stay and to do something in the US, to work, find an internship. So by some magic way, I actually did. I had connections through a friend I had met on a very niche hobby forum online doing speedrunning. We happened to play the same game, and he worked for Citrix, which is a big American company. So he got my resume to the right person. And I got an internship there in Santa Barbara, California. So I moved from Maryland, where I studied, over to California. It turned out to be 2 internships back to back. It was a strange way, but they wanted to keep me there longer. I didn't say no. So
good sign.
Started out there. Yeah, came back, finished up my studies, started working for Citrix again from Stockholm, together with 2 friends that I brought along from my university class. And then just from there, I've been working my way to earlier and earlier stage companies. So I knew right from the start that I wanted to work in startups. So after Citrix, I worked at Magin, another Stockholm-based company doing streaming. From there, I went to Sparta, which was an even smaller company doing kind of a leaderboard for salespeople, and we later pivoted into more of an engagement tool. But that company was acquired, and after that, after a long while of looking for a new job, I found Stravito, and that was sort of the perfect fit of what I was looking for. And at that point, it was pretty much year 1. I believe they had sold their first or signed the first contract. There was a product. There wasn't much of a product, but I got in there. So I wasn't there right from the start, but pretty early on. So it's been an exciting ride since then.
Super. And talking about Stravito, then let's understand it. Let's go a little bit deeper into what it is, what the company does. Can you give us an overview of Stravito? What is it, and what kinds of customers do you work with?
Sure. I can try and do sort of a brief recap of why the company exists, and we can get into it from there. So Stravito was started in Stockholm in 2017, and the easiest way to describe us is probably enterprise SaaS. And we are solving a problem that a lot of global companies have. So just as an example, imagine you work for a luxury fashion brand, and you want to understand how consumers in Japan perceive sustainable fashion. And somewhere in your company, you probably have that knowledge or that research. And if you do, you likely paid a lot of money for it.
Right.
But finding it, that's where it gets interesting. So before Stravito, typically what companies would do is they would spend hours digging through SharePoint folders or network drives or wherever they would store their data, or emailing multiple colleagues, just hoping someone knows where to find the right information. Or even, worse, you'd commission new research for research that the company already has. And we've heard all of these examples from customers before they used us. And so this was something that became clear to our founders firsthand. So we have 4 founders, and 2 of them come from the market research industry.
Right.
And they had just sold their previous business to GfK, a big market research company. And they were literally the ones selling these highly valuable research reports to global companies. And they kept seeing how those companies struggled to apply the research that they had bought. And so we've heard examples about clients asking for the same report multiple times, just reaching out again to the people who sold it to you, like, because they couldn't find it internally. So they say, like, okay, you sent me this report before. Can you send it again?
Yeah.
And in some cases, they would actually commission research that they already have, but maybe from a different office or from a different region or different business unit. And it's not just inefficient, that's expensive. These are really expensive reports.
You're paying again for what you've already paid for, essentially.
Exactly. And it takes a lot of time to produce them. It just makes no sense. So that's where we started. That's where they identified the problem. Our other two founders come from the tech world. So they bring the sort of the tech experience. And their last place was iZettle. So that was before the PayPal acquisitions. I guess it's Zettle by PayPal these days.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, they formed the basis of the company together. And today we're over 100 people. It's fascinating. It's been a nice, I mean, it hasn't been hyper growth, but it's been a nice growth since I started. Yeah. I believe we're in 8 countries these days. And
fantastic.
And the companies we work with, like I said, they're global, really big companies are the ones that have these kinds of problems that we solve. Yep. So we work with, for example, Heineken, Comcast, Delta Airlines, sort of the really, really big enterprises that you probably have heard of, most of them. And if you haven't heard of them, it's pretty guaranteed that you've heard of the brands that they have.
And these are huge, huge companies with a mountain full of data to, keep track of, or to store, to sieve through, right? So I can imagine it's highly, highly relevant for these. Super. And I'm a little interested to hear, how the technology works more in practice. Obviously, I'm not asking you to lift the lid and reveal everything, but more, how it works in practice for these companies, or in order for you to be able to deliver value for these companies.
Sure. So what we do is when we gain access to the data from a few different places. So either companies will upload content directly to our platform, or other companies will still use SharePoint, but they will sync the files automatically over to us. And same goes with Google Drive. And the third way is using integrations towards research providers. So companies like Mintel or Kantar, like really big research providers who do a lot of the research, like they look at trends and things like that, that are important for these companies to know about. We integrate with them. So all of this is in service of centralizing data and making us the one-stop shop where you can go and find what you're looking for. So that's one thing, making sure we have the right data in place, because that's where it all starts. Yep. And the other thing is, when we have the data, we put it in our search engine. And the big thing is that just having the data in one place doesn't do you much good. Right. It's the next thing is you need to be able to find it. So what we had done up to November 2022 mainly was working on our search engine. So this is pre-generative AI. That's why that time frame. Yeah. So that's all about being able to find the right information quickly, and then when you find it, be able to view it in a nice way, be able to share it with other, organize it, and so that's sort of the main base of the platform before generative AI came into our lives.
And we're gonna, I think, we'll spend a bit more time kind of talking about Gen AI and how you're using it, how it's kind of empowered end users as well here, I think. But talking of like how critical these kind of knowledge management essentially is for these different companies. Knowledge management in itself is often seen as this kind of behind the scenes function, right? What would you say kind of makes it such a critical factor for large enterprises today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's moving from a nice to have to a must have. or something maybe that's being pushed more from the IT side or from inside the company, and now it's being more of it's almost become a boardroom priority. So it's really moving quickly towards the must-have. And to illustrate just why that is so important and what companies are realizing is that so we work with Heineken, like I mentioned, and they've told us recently that they now save about 1,500 hours per week just having their insights team not have to answer questions about existing research.
Right.
And so that's not just back office stuff. That's thousands of hours that they can then use to work on more strategic challenges instead of searching for information. And so just with the scale of that, with how big these companies are and how global their operations are, they're really starting to realize how much there is to gain from this. And a lot of the time wasted and a lot of the delays in making decisions because you're not finding the right information, it's kind of hidden. And it hasn't been up until now that they're really starting to realize how much efficiency and how much time, how much money can be saved by investing more in this. Yeah,
no, it's a really, really good point. And you mentioned the fact that now teams don't have to kind of sift through all this data and find an answer themselves. It's basically created or generated for them. But kind of pre-platforms like Stravito's, for example, when large teams need fast access to market research, right? What's the cost of getting this wrong? You mentioned that, this is obviously before people would have spent a lot of time and therefore a lot of money would have gone into this. But what else? What other costs are there in getting this wrong?
Yeah. So the reason why you want to use this information in the right way, it's not just about saving money. It's about making better decisions faster.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if you make the wrong decision because you base it on the wrong data, or that there was data you didn't know you had that you could have used that would have changed that decision, that's what's really dangerous, because then you're thinking you have all you need, but maybe you don't. And markets are moving faster and faster, and so it's more and more important to have access to the right data to base your decisions on.
Exactly. And talking about, we'll give you a little bit of time to kind of shout about Stravito here, but success stories, impact. Can you share any recent success stories or case studies where Stravito and the platform made a significant impact for a customer?
Yeah, actually, probably will bring up what I already talked about. So Heineken. And specifically, we haven't gotten into our GenAI features yet, but that's a big enabler for that. Really, is our conversational GenAI feature that we call Assistant. That's really what made it possible for them to save that amount of time. And I think what they said is it's about 900,000 euros per year. Wow. And I mean, that's just the first. Yeah, that's a lot. But that's also the first use case that we've worked with, and there's so much more that we can do. This is really the start. Assistant became publicly available for our customers in June this year, and we have so much in store. I mean, more upgrades to Assistant and other GenAI-based features or features in general that will help with this kind of thing. So it's really interesting to see, but it's really only the first indication of how much this can save for companies.
Yep. Well, let's dive into this kind of AI aspect. Then now I think it's the right time to do so. So your Stravito's, working on obviously on new kind of product development, and particularly with generative AI to kind of power the platform here and the end users. Can you share more about what you're building and how this, you mentioned the AI assistant, how this kind of fits into your vision at Stravito?
Sure. So when ChatGPT launched, I think we both we and our customers both realized at the same time that this is going to change everything. This is going to be huge because we're sitting on lots and lots of strategically important and really valuable unstructured data, which is sort of a gold mine when it comes to using generative AI. So it was all about finding the right use case. And what we've done with Assistant is really, that was the thing that was top of mind for us and for our customers. They wanted to have a way to talk to their data, to be able to find it more easily, to be able to condense a lot of data from different kinds of market research reports into a nice answer. And it's really a way in a conversational interface to have access to the data, to be able to kickstart or support workflows that you already have. So Assistant is kind of a general purpose way of working with your data. So you can do lots of different things. And we're trying to get away from the sort of the blank page problem of here's a prompt, do whatever you want. That's really the starting point. We're using these chat-based interfaces. So we're working a lot with our customers and really trying to understand what they want to be able to do and how they can get value. So we try to package that in ways where you can start your conversation in a certain path, and that will save you a lot of time trying to figure out how to make Assistant do the work for you. So we're trying to make that a lot easier and not just have the chat box.
Really, really interesting. So, I mean, this Assistant AI is kind of helping to improve access to loads of different insights for users, essentially. How does it, under the hood, how does it, for myself, for our listeners as well, how does it kind of give the user, in this case, if I'm trying to access the insights, how does it give that user kind of meaningful information from this? It's not just kind of looking at the data and retrieving it and showing it to the user. It's kind of extracting meaning for the end user as well, right? How does that side of things work?
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting leap from what we had before. With we have a really competent search engine, but it's not able to look at data in a semantic way, the same way it can do with
it's
generative
semantic
AI.
layers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the main difference is the way these systems work when you're working on a RAG-based system, retrieval augmented generation, is that you are taking the text in the reports or the information in the reports, encoding them so that they can be stored in a vector database. And when you then run a prompt, you'll be able to look at these different paragraphs and see how they are, what's semantically the most closest to answering the question or the prompt that you've put in. And then you will get results from different reports. One paragraph here, one here from different reports. That is then what goes into the LLM, which will then produce an answer that incorporates the reference to the sources and the text that's in them to produce an answer that hopefully responds exactly like you want to the prompt that you put in.
Fantastic. So much kind of goes on behind the scenes, right? That to kind of empower this process. Really, really interesting. Can you disclose any information on any additional features or upcoming features, milestones that you're especially excited about?
Yeah, so we're like I alluded to before, we are working on a lot of upgrades to Assistant. So right now, it's we'll see how this ages. Everything moves quickly in the Gen AI world, but right now we're focusing a lot on improving the core experience of Assistant. When you find the information you want, how can you dig deeper? How can you look at trends across reports? How can you identify knowledge gaps, summarize large quantities of text? So that's sort of one track that we're working on. And the other is going from the multipurpose tool of Assistant and taking the step towards very specialized use cases or assistants that can help you with more detailed things that you do in your day-to-day at these global companies. And I think that's where it gets really interesting, because we work really closely with our customers and really try and dig deep and understand what it is that they do and what the kind of work that they need to produce, what the outputs look like, what the challenges are, what data they need to get to that output. And that's so that's a really interesting track where we have multiple things going on with several customers.
Really, really nice. So you're not just basically building something that's a solution to these kind of more common problems across these different organizations, you're also looking into building quite niche assistance, as you put it, here as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think lots of people start at the general. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's that's why in ChatGPT and Claude and products like that, they're super versatile. They can do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, that becomes more and more commoditized. And the big value is going one step further or two steps further and thinking about, okay, so what are you actually trying to do when you work with products like these? So I think that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, all of this is crazy. It's been a wild ride these past 2 years, constantly trying to keep up with all of this and making sure we know where the limitations are and really trying to push the boundaries. But that's where I think it gets really interesting, because we have a solid base, and now we can really try and go a lot deeper on very specialized paths.
Really interesting. And talking of trends and challenges in this kind of enterprise knowledge management we're talking about here, what trends and challenges are you seeing among your customers right now?
Well, so on the challenges side, I think it's been really interesting to see how that has changed over the years. Not that it's been a lot of years, but in 2023, the main challenge really, before we could get anywhere, was to get in the door and to get them to accept to actually deploy AI solutions. So for these big companies, they are understandably very risk averse. And so we had to learn a lot on how to approach that, what kind of materials we needed to produce, what kind of guarantees we needed to be able to give them on how we use the data or not use the data, training and so on, and all of those specifics. But at the same time, also in some cases, I think educating the customers, because like I said, I mean, this moves so quickly, a lot of stuff happening. And these companies really want to understand. They want to understand implications. They want to understand risks. And in some cases, they hadn't been able to catch up to everything that was going on. So that meant a lot of stuff took time in the beginning. But as we moved into this year, it has been more about, we're getting over that first hurdle. We're getting the acceptance. They're realizing that this is going to help us a lot. They're finding a way to accept, to use it and work with compliance-wise. And now it's more about, okay, we have it. How do we deploy it to the masses? So that's been the next step, is getting from evaluations and working with some of the stakeholders and seeing that there's value there, to being able to have them accept to roll this out broadly. Because there's a very real concern, which I think is valid, that if you have this very powerful solution, you can just ask a question and get an answer. How do you make sure that people are using it in the right way? That people are doing their due diligence, actually looking at the sources. It's the same thing that you have in ChatGPT. Please check the sources. That's still true. We don't have the omni AI that is always correct. There's always things that you need to provide as a human, and that's why we also think that this is empowering humans. It's not replacing humans. We're far away from it. But that's kind of been the main one this year. I think we're starting to see a big change there as well. But in 2025, I think the main challenge will be looking ahead. I think it's going to be really companies really wanting to see that ROI, that return on investment, and really being able to see the value and run that against the cost and see that adds up. I'm confident that we'll get there, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Do you kind of see that also as kind of part of your solution, your job also to kind of help the end users, these enterprise companies, to kind of quantify that ROI?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's it's so in our DNA to be focused on the customer and helping them with everything from change management to the ROI piece. So it's been a big focus, and it's become even bigger with this. So we have a fantastic customer success department who works really closely with our customers to make them feel confident in everything we do from the start, with getting us on board and all the way out to really following up with them on a regular basis and talking about the ROI. And that's how the Heineken piece came to be, that we work closely with them and try to figure out, okay, how is this working for you? What's the kind of work that's that's become more efficient, and how does that work for you?
Yeah. And when it comes to challenges as well, I think you were talking about earlier about how you've had to learn and kind of maybe change your approach when approaching these bigger companies and convincing them to use a solution like Stravito's. If you were kind of meeting or like met with quite a bit of resistance, a lot of this must be around kind of, security aspects, for example. That must be a massive kind of question mark oftentimes. You obviously need as much data as possible to kind of make the most out of a platform like Stravito's, right? So how have you really gone about kind of getting a foot in to these bigger companies, basically, and ensuring that they can get the most from the product as possible as well? Because obviously, the more, if they're going to kind of upload or use the entirety of their knowledge base, they're obviously going to be able to get the most value from it. So it's kind of, I'm intrigued as to kind of how does this process, it's like a sales process, obviously, in the beginning, but then obviously you want that company to extract as much value as possible from the product. So kind of how's that kind of pieced together over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. And really, it's the resistance has been not from the people we talk to, the people in the business. They know they want this. So it's more about how they navigate that internally. And there are a lot of hoops to jump through, and there are a lot of checks they need to get through. So that's sort of where it's been. And we're working with them to work with their IT and their compliance departments. But so that's one piece. But the other is it's equally important for us to be able to get access to data that they don't have themselves. So as an example, we talked a little bit about the research providers. And that's a huge piece, because if you want one central place where you can work on your data and find the right insights, you need to make sure that the data is there. So that's also something that we have had to become really good at, is working with these research providers together with the customers and make sure that all three parties are aligned, and that we find a way that works for all of us, and so that the research companies can provide the data for their customers through our platform in a way that makes sense for them, and especially being used in an AI product, which has raised the bar on how we work with this. But it's really another area where we've had to learn, and we have had to learn quickly. But I'm really happy with where we are right now, and being able to really prove that value to the research providers, so that we can create this flywheel where everyone becomes everyone gets more value in this whole process, and no one's being left out.
It's really, really interesting to kind of hear how it's not just a platform for a user's account where they have access to data that might already exist within that organization, but you're also kind of complementing it, adding to it, enriching it with this external data from other providers as well. It's really, really nice approach. And so Stravito is kind of emphasizing, democratizing insights, or whatever way you want to put it. I'm interested to kind of get your take on how generative AI makes knowledge more accessible across an entire organization, especially for like these non-technical teams. What's your take on this?
Well, I think first of all, you need something that's a bit more user-friendly than working with folders or even SharePoint. It's been around for a long time, but I don't think search is the best thing that they do. But to make it easy to use is the first thing, and that's really been at the core of what we've tried to do, is keep it really, really simple. And so the first thing is just be able to put in a search bar what you're looking for, or have someone work with. We have collections is another way, which is kind of like a Spotify playlist that you can put front and center for everyone who logs in, and they can see, okay, this is the collection for sustainable innovation, and everyone gets to see it, and you can easily find the information you need, and to have that on a per team level. So it's really about making it easy to find the right things at the right time, and not really requiring extensive training to be able to use whatever tool you want.
Right.
And that's why I think is so intriguing with generative AI, is that you can really lower that bar for entry even more, and have it be explorative in a way where you don't have to learn how the search engine works. You can talk to it more. So it's really, it's really making it easier to find more things and to find relevant things when you're working with that kind of technology.
And I can imagine as well, even before Stravito was founded, but also given the kind of type of clients or customers that you're working with, that there's been this kind of shift from, on-premise knowledge management systems, right, or solutions to these kind of cloud-based platforms, right? This shift kind of reduces hardware maintenance costs, and it's more kind of scalable, more accessible, of course. What kind of have you seen this shift within your customers' companies? I can only imagine you have, but I'm interested to kind of hear more.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised when I started at Stravito that there was such a high level of acceptance for cloud-based products. And it's really been pretty rare that we've been in conversations where on-prem has really been part of the conversation.
Right.
So it's been more about, for us, it's been really important to make sure we have a secure cloud environment, and to be able to convey that to the customers in a good way. So it's been more about that. So early on, we got an ISO 27001 certification. We just became SOC 2 compliant.
Nice.
We put a lot of emphasis on security. And so that's where it is. Luckily, we didn't have to, or haven't so far, had to have a lot of that conversation of on-prem or not. For sure, it shows up. And I would assume that companies in the future will probably want to do more AI things on-premise. But we haven't seen much of that yet. But we're still so early on in the life cycle of this stuff that it's really hard to tell exactly where it's going to go. But I think that wouldn't surprise me, at least.
Yeah. Moving on to kind of addressing, AI hype and challenges as well. I mean, you touched upon it earlier. I think you said, we're very, very far from AI replacing humans, and I think it's one kind of common phrase, right, that we all hear, is that kind of AI is replacing jobs. I think there's truth to it, of course, in certain jobs in certain industries, but it's also a misconception for some. How do you frame AI as a tool to empower teams rather than displace them?
Yeah, I think one of the angles for that is just the limitations that we're seeing. So to being really clear about limitations is the first thing. I think that's the honest thing to do, and that's every time you do that, you're actually educating people, because I think it's really hard to, when you put in front of an AI tool, to really see where the boundaries are. It seems limitless. It seems magical in the first time you use it. I've had that experience so many times now with, first of all, ChatGPT, but I mean, the first time I saw video generation tools, or song generation tools, or Notebook LM for podcasts.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's you're not going to be out of a job, because if you try something multiple times, it doesn't matter the product, but if you just sit with it for half an hour or an hour, and you try different things, or you even try the same thing over and over, pretty quickly you're going to start to see patterns emerge, and you're going to see like, oh, it always does this thing like that, or I recognize this sort of pattern. And once you do that, you can't unsee or unhear. Then you realize, oh, okay, so it's really, really good at doing something pretty simple. And I think there's still a lot of that. So it's not obvious from the beginning. So that's why I think it's so tricky, and that's why I think a lot of the hype springs from, or a lot of the misconceptions, or people thinking that we're going to be so close to replacing humans, while in fact I think we're far away from that, and we're starting to see that, okay, for generalized tools, they're not going to be able to solve everything. We have to go very specific. And if you do that, and if you have a really sober view on where the limits are, then I think you can get a lot out of this kind of technology. Yeah. But if you think too broad, at least I think it's going to be too far away. With the models have to be a lot better than they are today for that to work. At least.
Yep. I think we're also very far away from it. Notebook LM, I've used it as well. I'm glad to hear that you also think my job is safe as host. But it's a cool tool, absolutely. But also, what in terms of kind of AI hype as well, some of the challenges. What I'd like your take as well on some of the challenges in developing AI products within an enterprise context. Of course, the Gen AI and everything is it augments the human significantly. But what would you say in the enterprise context have been some of the challenges in kind of developing these AI products?
Yeah, so we talked about just getting in the door and all that stuff. But when we're there and we're working with this, I think there's a lot of that education piece of it's not really education, but it's more being really clear about what is this, what can it do, what can it not do. And it's so easy to not because you missed something, but because there's an opportunity for someone to think that the product can do something. That's where it gets really your thoughts can fly away with you, and you can think that it's going to solve all of your problems.
Right.
But the reality is that you have to be really, really, really specific in what you're trying to do, regardless of the tool. And a lot of what I'm seeing is, or even with myself and just using these kinds of products in general, is often you want an answer to what's in your head, but not what you put in the prompt. There's just so much that goes on between a thought and something that is actually understandable by another human being. So an interesting test that I think is good is, for something you put in a prompt, imagine you say that to a human being, and think about what would they respond. Would they actually get it? Would they give you the response that you're really looking for? So I don't think that's unique for enterprises, but I think the stakes are a lot higher when you're working with the enterprise.
Yep.
And so being clear about that kind of thing is much more important, or even more important. So with enterprises, a lot of what you're doing is to provide very specific value to things that they want to improve in their lives and in their organization's lives, and being able to match what you have to that is really important. And in that, being clear about, it's great for this, don't use it for this. Because people have a tendency to fill in the blanks with things that would be good for them.
Yeah. No, really, really good point. And it's a good point also about kind of, if you would say the same thing that you're kind of prompting to a human being, and they'd probably ask, I don't know what you mean, or whatever it might be. I love the fact that the large majority of the time, these kind of LLMs are kind of always responding with something, right? There's no kind of, I'm not quite sure what you mean. They've always got an answer, whether it might be the right one or wrong one.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something we've very specifically run into is, we don't think that the LLM is capable of answering a really broad question or a vague question directly. Right. So we've actually built that into the system to make sure that it goes one step further or two steps further, and trying to understand, what's your intent? What are you trying to do? Can you clarify this? Do you mean this or that?
Yeah.
And it's been a necessity, and that's why we do a conversational interface. That's why we don't do ask a question and get a response, because we think there's so much context that gets left out. Yeah, and that the human in the loop needs to provide, and so we try to make that sort of that interaction work better and be more of a collaboration, rather than telling the LLM what to do and then just come back with the perfect answer.
Really nice that you've thought about that aspect as well. But switching gears a little bit here. Your take on I want your take on CTO kind of leadership and building teams basically. But what would you say, or what qualities do you think make a great developer today?
So I don't want to be the AI guy all the time, but I think in this day and age, I think curiosity is more important than ever. There's just so much going on.
Yep.
And even that doesn't mean jump on every bandwagon there is and try every tool, because every tool is going to make you a super developer. It's not that. But I think staying open-minded and being curious is really, really important. But I think that's not all, because I think you need to balance that as well. So I think there's a risk for us as a community of developers to lose track a little bit of understanding what we're doing. A risk, not, I don't know how big it is, but I think it is a risk, because with these generative tools, you can sort of run away with that and lose track of where you are and what you've actually built. And you can create something that works. But if you go back to it later and it breaks, what was it that broke? I mean, you don't have the mental model. You have to spend a lot more time building that before you can fix something. So I think you need to have a balance of curiosity and maybe even a deeper understanding of what you're doing these days, because it's so easy for things to spiral out of control when you can generate code with the drop of a hat.
Yeah. That's really a really nice word, I think, curiosity in this day and age. But in addition to kind of curiosity, if you were to build your ideal development team, let's say, what skills, mindsets, practices would you prioritize?
This one, I think, honestly, it's an evergreen. I try to think about these things in a way that's timeless, and try to always think about the long term. And so that's why I think, I mean, what we talked about just now is important today, but it's not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is to really be to have the ambition, have the drive to build something great, and wanting to learn constantly and to always challenge yourself, and to be autonomous in doing it. I think that's sort of the main thing. But even more important to that is humility and just being a nice person and just being good to be around and to be a good teammate. So yeah, like I said, I believe in the long term. And if you're building a team, if you're building a company, it's not going to work if you underinvest in having the right people who have the right mindset and just are nice people.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't matter how good they are at coding. It's going to fall apart. It's just a matter of time. So I really see it as the tried and true. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I like running, so it's a good word to use. Yeah. But that's really what it is. I try to have, for everything that we do, keep a constant level for what we do as much as possible. No rushing to get somewhere, no crunching. Just having something that's sustainable over time. And that's beyond coding, just the environment being psychologically safe and just being a nice environment to be around. Because you spend a lot of time at work. So want to make sure it's a good environment.
Exactly, yeah. I spend a hell of a lot of time at work. But I've seen also Stravito recognized for team culture, strong product team as well. How do you foster collaboration between engineering, product, and customer teams as well?
That's a really good question. And I think it comes down to, I think we do that pretty well in the company in general. And I'm trying to think of why that is. So a lot of that comes from, we try to not have any walls. So between teams. And so starting, if you think of like concentric circles, it starts with all of R&D, with tech product design, and if that's in the middle, because that's where we're talking. Yeah. So leaders in tech product design meet every day. If not every day, then just every other day. Yeah. Sometimes multiple times a day. And so that's one way where it starts, is really being collaborative on that side. Because what you do in leadership tends to go down into the teams and in some cases be magnified. Same thing in the teams. We have the trio models. We have a PM, a designer, and a tech lead for each team. So we try and have representation from all of those teams in there. And between teams, well, we try to, when we plan for things, we look across the teams. So we don't want to have the teams only focus on exactly what's in their bucket. More important than that is, what we do as a company and what we do as the entire R&D team. So that's something we get back to time and time again, is what's the best thing for all of us to do. And that could mean teams collaborating, some people working across teams, and helping out. I think that's really important to maintain, that it's important to have autonomous teams, but that shouldn't overshadow the fact that, we have common goals to get to.
Yeah.
And then, with customer success, we try to stay really close and understand the customers. They feed us with a lot of information on how customers and stakeholders and users perceive the product, problems that they have, or even praise that they have. They share that as well. So we get the full gamut of all of that stuff. And so that it means we can be closer to them, and we work a lot with customer success in how to roll things out. So in an enterprise setting, it's really important that the right people have a say. Sometimes that doesn't change what we do, but just being heard and taking in the feedback. And so a lot of work goes into that as well. So we just try to make sure that we have a lot of glue between departments as well as within the teams in R&D.
Yeah, really, really good answer. Interesting to kind of hear how you guys approach it, and also with that kind of client focus as well. I'm interested also just to get quickly your take on kind of balancing innovation with, and speed and also quality. What processes or tools do you have in place, or do you rely on to ensure that your teams can move fast without compromising product quality or integrity?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because I think oftentimes one might get into thinking about this as either or. It's either speed or quality. I think that's not necessarily a good way to view it. So it's more of like what you said, is how do we maintain quality at speed? So a lot of that is having experienced people as part of the team, and not necessarily everyone, but having people who've been around and seen this work helps a lot. And on the system side, making sure we have the right checks in place and pipelines, automated testing, all of that stuff, so that you can, from the vantage point of a junior developer, just come in and do your work and rely on that the system will save you from, you shouldn't have to be scared of doing simple mistakes that cause big problems. So that's one thing, just having that sort of harness in place. And then I think it's about the mindset, and it helps if you're experienced in, just using the right patterns right away, adding those few tests, and just the little extra things you have to add to make sure that the code is reliable, fault tolerant, whatever it might be. And not just throw all of that caution to the wind in the name of speed. So I think it's a combination of that, the mindset of the developers and the tooling that you put in place. And so for us, we have a lot of that built in, so that it's hard to make mistakes. We want to make it harder and harder to make mistakes. And that sort of relieves pressure, and then make sure people can move faster and just try stuff. Super.
And a final question from me is really regarding future of software development, future of AI, really. I think within development, but also beyond development, where do you see the next frontier for AI in business software? Are there any industries or any functions that you think are currently kind of underexplored, for example?
Well, that's a really good one. I mean, top of mind, of course, is software development and how that works. And I think that's where a lot of focus is as well, and rightfully so. And sort of where we are right now is we have a lot of help already, just a couple of years in with, you can chat to Claude or ChatGPT and draft an idea of what a product or feature should be. You can get code suggestions. You can dissect that and go deeper. It can be a lot of help. And then going further, you can in the IDE when you're developing, you can get help from, for example, Cursor. It's very integrated. It's not just a separate suggestion somewhere else. It just can actually be inside the code base and contextually help you out. But in terms of frontier, I think where it gets really interesting and more speculative is in the realm of AI software engineers or AI full stack engineers. I don't know if there's a common name, but products like Lovable, which is here from Stockholm, where it's a conversational interface, but it builds code for you, and it's, like I said, it's full stack, so it's the whole thing, and it's code that you can take out of that and use somewhere else. It's actual code. It's not. It's kind of like it's starting to deliver on the low code, no code promise of anyone can come in and do software. But it's actual software. It's not some middle layer in between. So that I think is really interesting on sort of a higher level, where it significantly lowers the bar for writing software. So it's really kind of democratizing software development in a way that I've never seen before. That anyone can just go in, use the chat box, and you can build software. It's amazing. But it's still early on. While the product is fantastic, it's still early on. So probably more suitable for smaller scale projects or building prototypes. But really, really powerful in that right context. Like we talked about before, it's all about finding the specialized context. But products like that, and there are others like Devon and V0, Replit, lots of them. And even ChatGPT or Claude or Cursor, they're all focused on the individual. It's about the improving the output of the individual and making them more efficient. So I think for the future, I think we're going to see a lot more that's focused on teams and how teams work together and making that better and more efficient or faster, whatever it might be. And the next step, of course, taking that one step further to the entire organization. And we haven't seen much of that at all. I think there are some embers, but we haven't seen the full thing. So I think that's sort of how I think about how it's cool stuff. It's a bit scary, but it's really fascinating to see this unfold.
I think scary in a way, exciting. I don't know. I think a combination of the two for sure. But is there anything, Jonas, that you'd like to add before I wrap up here?
No. It's a nice conversation. Thank you very much.
Really, really nice of you to join. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a really insightful conversation. Super interesting to hear how Stravito is transforming knowledge management with AI as well, and also to hear your thoughts on the future of development. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us and joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in to another episode of Builders. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. Until next time, keep building, keep innovating, and we'll see you next time.